Guruve Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadale Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tad Bhaktaya Namo Namaha Vanchakalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Dandavat Pranam devotees. This is a really short reply to a question that came yesterday. I still have a couple of questions that I have not gotten to from the backlog, so to speak. I'll do those after, probably into next week. Of course, tomorrow is our Janmashtami Tithi, and then of course the Avirbhav of our Srila Prabhupada. So I'll put my concentration and energy into absorption there. Even now, on our nightly phone conference, we're having some absorption in Krishna Janma Lila. So, but just quickly to answer a question that came in today, it's because it's from a devotee who regularly writes in, and I do want to give a quick response, and I don't think it should take long. One, let me get the question. The question was that you've mentioned in other videos about Raganuga Bhakti, and you mentioned it, I guess it was yesterday, I must have mentioned it in relation to a devotee who asked a question about it. And I've heard, this is the statement in the question, I've heard that our Srila Prabhupada did not really emphasize Raganuga Bhakti. So can you give any reconciliation? So a couple of things. One is, we can't say that Srila Prabhupada did not emphasize Raganuga Bhakti because Srila Prabhupada multitasked and did several things at one time. So Srila Prabhupada cast a very wide net in order to bring people into the fold of understanding that we are eternal servants of Bhagavan, and that our duties to serve Bhagavan, and that our continual misuse of free will, because there was no genesis in terms of the misuse of free will, but there's a continuum of it, right? As long as we are not surrendered and not Bhagavan Unmuk means turned towards Bhagavan, there's a continuum in the misuse of free will. So Srila Prabhupada cast a wide net to sort of grab people in and make them aware and make them conscious to understand those facts, that I am the eternal servant of Bhagavan and my duties to serve Bhagavan, and I am in a continuum of the misuse of my free will, and because of that, we're suffering the threefold miseries, Adhyatmik, Adhibhautik, Adhitaivik, and we're also subject to birth, old age, disease, and death, all the things that Srila Prabhupada apparently on a regular basis preached. But we have to look at the fact that Srila Prabhupada wrote voluminously, and we have to look at the fact of what he wrote. So if you study carefully Srimad Bhagavatam, in the very first verse and in that purport, Srila Prabhupada has stated, in the Janmadhyasya Yataha Anviyad Itarachastra Arteshu Avigyasarat. Srila Prabhupada quotes the Tika of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, that if you want to understand more information on the, Srila Prabhupada I think quoted it as sex psychology, but the meaning here is on the nature of praying and Madhurya Rasa, Snigdha Rasa, you should see the commentary of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur on this verse. So right there from verse number 1 of his opus work of the comment of writing and translating Srimad Bhagavatam, he gives emphasis to, if you want to understand this deeply, study Rasik Siromani, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary on this. So you have to look at the large spectrum of Srila Prabhupada's activities. Secondly, Srila Prabhupada's prominent installation of deities was of Sri Radha Krishna. So the worship of Radha Krishna, especially the mood of worshiping Radha Krishna in Vrindavan, cannot be done by Vaidhi Bhakti, right? Sakale Jagatere More Vaidhi Bhakti Brajabha Vaiti Nahi Sakti. So you cannot worship Radha and Krishna in Braj by the process of Vaidhi Bhakti. Now, someone may say, well, that Srila Prabhupada installed deities of Radha and Krishna didn't necessarily have to emphasize Raganuga Bhakti because we have the idea that Krishna in Mathura and Dwarka also exist. So Srila Prabhupada could have installed those deities with the idea of Krishna as Mathura's Krishna or Dwarkadish Krishna. Of course, there's some theological problem with that because Srimati Radhika is not in Mathura and not in Dwarka. So the establishment of the deities of Radha and Krishna definitively represents Vrindavan. Secondly, if you closely examine the program that Srila Prabhupada gave on a daily basis for us to do, I'll skip ahead of the waking up in the morning and offering your pranam to Shri Guru Dev and all the prerequisites. But when you attend the Mangalarti, the very first song that's sung, of course in Vrindavan, it is sung in the Samadhi of Srila Prabhupada, and then we come to the temple and the Mangalarti begins there in front of the deities. But the Guru Ashtakam song, by close examination and looking at the Fal Stuti, definitively tells you that Srila Prabhupada's mode of approach and worship was based on Brajabhav. And this Brajabhav is acquired by the practice of Raganuga Sadhana, or Raganuga Bhakti. So how do we know that, Mukunda? Well, examine the meanings of Guru Ashtakam. If you're singing it ritualistically, then you might miss what's actually happening. But Srila Prabhupada, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakurpad rather, describes in beautiful kavya and poetry, in a sense, the saving of the jiva from samsara, the nature of Mahaprabhu's kirtan and his kirtana nityadita, Mahaprabhu kirtana nityadita, Mahaprabhu's dancing and singing. So Mahaprabhu's dancing and singing was based on the prem that Krishna wanted to taste after Brajalila. Purva Brajalila se 18 avilas. Krishna, after Brajalila, Krishna's Kaviraj says, was left with 3 desires. What is that? What is the Mahima? It means the glory of the Pranay or love of Radhika. Secondly, what is the special way that Radhika tastes the 4 transcendental sweetnesses of Krishna? His Lila Madhuri, Venu Madhuri, Rupa Madhuri, and Prem Madhuri. She tastes in such a special way. And Shokyam Chasya, what is her happiness that seems to exceed my happiness by thousands and thousands or millions and millions of times? So in order to do that, the Lord himself accepted the mood and the kanti or bhav or effulgence of Srimati Radhika and appeared as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So the dancing and singing of Mahaprabhu is prem rasani askarite ashwadan. It is Krishna's tasting of the extreme mood of love of Srimati Radhika. This is all related to Brajabhav, which is related to Raganuga Bhakti. Also, Shri Vigrahara Dhana Nityanana Shringaratan Mandir Majanara. I don't want to make this whole class on Guru Ashtakam because I've done that many times. So here, if you progressively go through the Guru Ashtakam, even coming to the point of Shri Radhikaya Madhavyoda Para, that my Guru Dev, his glory is that he's always absorbed every moment in absorption of the transcendental pastimes of Radha and Madhav. There's so much deep significance here, I'm not going into that now. But then Nikunja Yuno Rati Keli Siddhai, that my Guru Dev is Siddha in Nikunja Seva. None of this is in Mathura or Dwarka. And the Fal Stuti, Srimad Guru Rastakame Tarochai, Brahma Muhurte, Pradakti Prayatna, Yat Seva Vrindavana, Nata Sakshat Sevaya Labja, Janswanteva. That if you sing this Guru Ashtakam during Brahma Muhurta, understanding its meaning and applying your mood of service to it, you will obtain, as a result of that, direct service in Vrindavan to Yugal Kishore Radha Krishna. And then after that, we sing the prayers to Tulsi Devi, begging Tulsi Devi, oh, please make me a resident of Vrindavan. Please give me the service of Radha and Krishna. Please make me anugatya to the Sakis of Radhika, which means Lalita and Visakha, which this directly indicates Manjari Bhav, right? Give me the service of the Sakis of Radhika. Make me anugatya to them, right? So always see the beautiful pastimes of Shri Radha and Krishna, even pastimes the Sakis don't see, right? So if you examine what Srila Prabhupada gave as a sadhan, every sadhan has a sadhya, means a goal. So if you're doing sadhan with all of these indications, what do you think the sajja is, the goal is? If somebody tells you, I'm in my third year of law school, I don't think they're going to be a veterinarian. So you have to kind of apply some common sense and then some insight, and then it becomes clear. So if we are practicing on a daily basis what it is that Srila Prabhupada gave, and all these indications of Braj mood, Braj desires are there, and they can't be acquired by Vaidhi Bhakti according to Chaitanya Charitamrita, it indicates Raganuga Bhakti. Now the next question is, well, are we practicing Raganuga Bhakti right now then? No, because there's an eligibility that's required to, in earnest, practice Raganuga Bhakti, and that earnest thing that's needed is called lobe. So where does this lobe come? In the stage of ruchi. Tat tat bhava adi madhyure shuti dira pekshate nasa sastana yuktingscha tal lovat utpatti lakshanam. So lobe arises in the stage of ruchi. So it means going through the stages of anartana vritti, coming to the platform of nishta, that has to still be done. So then what is our actual status? So it is called Raganuga Pravritti. We're practicing the elements of Vaidhi Marg in pursuit of eligibility for Raganuga sadhana. So this cannot be called exclusively Vaidhi Bhakti, because Vaidhi Bhakti also has a goal. Shravanam Kirtanandani Sastra Sashinabhayena. So in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu Bindu, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur Pari mentions that the practice of Vaidhi Bhakti is inspired by Sastra Sashinabhaya, means the fear of violating the rules and regulations of Sastra. And two things come here. One is a fear that by violation of those rules or regulations somehow, I will have to suffer in some way, form, or fashion. The second is that the goal of the genuine practice of Vaidhi Bhakti is Vaikuntha. And if I don't practice properly or sincerely or somehow or another don't get the mark in the practice of Vaidhi Bhakti, I will not obtain my goal of Vaikuntha. You understand? So, this is not in earnest Vaidhi Bhakti in our practice, because our aim and objective is Braj, which we've already established can't be attained by the practice of Vaidhi Bhakti. So, Shravanam Kirtanandani, Nija Abhimanasya, Vrajendra Nandana, Seva Prapti Lobena. We are doing hearing and chanting and following the rules of Vidhi, meaning, because you cannot do any kind of practice void of Vidhi, some rules and regulations. Even it's mentioned after obtaining eligibility for Raganuga sadhana. Shravanam Kirtanandani, Vaidhi Bhakti Sudanti tu. Right? Still, to set an example, and because there's genuine taste, right? Because the first level of ruchi is taste in bhajan itself, right? Even after obtaining eligibility for Raganuga sadhana, still one will practice Vaidhi Bhakti. There's no, okay, now I've come to Raganuga Bhakti, so I won't go to Mangalarti, I won't chant my rounds in any organized way, I will not follow this on. No, we don't read anywhere in Sastra that, with the exception of things which are, pratikul to developing the mood of Braj, like excessive dhyan or meditation on dwarka, absorption in nyas, which is all the rules and regulations like for things that are related to Vaikuntha, etc., etc. Those things we may curtail, right? And we'll also practice with a abhiman and a sambandha gyan. Abhiman means a self-conception, and a sambandha gyan that we receive the diksha, we'll practice in that absorption. Because if you don't have any absorption, you're not really doing sadhan bhakti. Because sadhan bhakti is to obtain the goal of pure devotion. And pure devotion is described as anukulyena Krishna anusilanam. And this word silanam, the dhatu sil dhatu means endeavor. And the endeavors are of two kinds. One is kayak, vachik, and manasik, means body, mind, and words. And the other is by mood, right? So there's karya roop and bhava roop. So you have to study these things in Srila Rupa Goswami Pad's writings. But so you also have to have mood, or you have to have emotional content. It's not just doing things ritualistically, or that will be niyamagraha, right? Rupa Goswami warned against that. So if you're going to apply mood, that mood has to come from somewhere. And the source of those moods is the diksha that you receive from Sri Guru. If you receive diksha in a genuine way, some Sambandha Gyan is given at that time, and that is your foundational root of where your moods are coming from to apply to your practice, right? So that could be a whole class, but point being that having everything geared according to the descriptions here of Raganuga and Vaidhi Bhakti I just gave, then it's clear that though Srila Prabhupada did not externally, in his multitasking, seem to give emphasis to Raganuga Bhakti, the entire program of Krishna consciousness is an emphasis on Raganuga Bhakti. Right? Now, some will give the, maybe perhaps, Purva argument that Srila Prabhupada said we should even worship the deities like Lakshmi Narayan. Here, Srila Prabhupada is not suggesting Rosabas, that I've given you deities of Radha and Krishna, but I want you to worship them like Chaturabhuj Narayan and Lakshmi Devi. He's saying that the standards of cleanliness, the standards of punctuality, the standards of opulence in which you offer things, that should all be like that because that's something you can understand, right? Worship like Vaikuntha, right? But the inner mood is not Vaikuntha Bhav, or the inner mood is not then Vaidhi Bhakti. So Srila Prabhupada is telling us that because we don't necessarily have the adhikar or qualification to have more bhav than substantive presentation. What I mean by that is that if a devotee's mood becomes very high, Krishna is told, Patram Pushpam Palam Toyam Yome Bhakta Prayachati. I'm accepting bhakti. If our bhakti is not so high class yet, we will have to do our best to offer according to our present conceptions and understanding. So we want to offer the best of everything in a punctual way, maintaining extreme cleanliness, etc., etc. But if you have sufficient mood and you don't have all of those things, and your adhikar has matured, right? Not on purpose, but it may be that the offering may not have the same, opulences of major temples or this or that. But if the mood of bhakti there is very high, that is better even. Because Krishna accepts bhakti. So someone being able to meticulously put together, a thali to be offered, meticulously having, ghee wicks that are, 2 feet tall and and to be dressed, pakadori, pakasari, etc., etc. And then, you go there and everything is simply ritualistic. So 4 times to the feet, 2 times to, etc., etc. And there's also no sambandha gyan or anything. Then this is not as pleasing to Krishna. You understand? But for us, it will help us to develop proper level of adhikar. So we have to go progressively, through the stages to come to that point. But back to the original point of the question, Srila Prabhupada did give emphasis in his writing. If you read Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's completely clear this is about Raganuga Bhakti. If you look at Srimad Bhagavatam, in terms of the progression of Srimad Bhagavatam, you'll see that Bhagavatam goes through all the various stages, right, giving instruction all the way. And then, of course, in the 10th canto, Srila Prabhupada called it the Sonam Honam. It describes the beauty of the love of Radha and Krishna. 11th canto describes how to perform bhakti to obtain that love. 12th canto describes all of the degraded natures of Kali Yuga and many other things. And then he concludes Srimad Bhagavatam with the verse, Nama Sankirtanayasa Sava Papa Pranasanam, right? So he concludes by explaining that everything we've done up to this point can be obtained in the avatar who's coming, who will spread Nam Sankirtan. So if you read in perspective Srimad Bhagavatam, because Srimad Bhagavatam 18,000 verses, 335 chapters, 100 stories, you have to have some connectivity, samgati in your reading and understanding, or you'll simply become lost in 18,000 different verses. And if you don't have, if you're not hearing on a regular basis from mature devotees about the proper perspective of understanding the overall theology of Mahaprabhu, then in those 18,000 verses, you'll get lost in contemporary issues, you'll get lost in just trying to give a class and be relevant, etc., right? So, when you read Srimad Bhagavatam with perspective from the first verse to the last verse, the first verse describing the beauty of the prema of Radha and Krishna and meeting and separation, etc., and then the last verse describing the coming of Mahaprabhu, right? And then you fill in all the gaps according to mature perspective in between, you begin to realize that this whole system is based in rag, marg, or lobh, transcendental greed. Now, we can't artificially bring about, either in our consciousness or in our practice, this greed. It comes from a combination of things. One is praktana aduniki shashti yasyat bhakti vasana. It comes from previously acquired bhakti samskars and also adunik samskars garnered in this life from association with high class of Vaishnavas, everything else. So we have to genuinely go through the unfoldment. Adoshara, tata sadhusanga, bhajana kriya, the influence of bhajan will remove anarthas, nischala yasha iti nishta will come to nishta where we're not so bombarded by material influence, then tat bhava adi madhurye. Then when we hear harikatha, when we chant harinam, some genuine lobh comes in the heart, greed or ruchi, right? Then that ruchi, when it matures, prodha parama atmaha sa iti bhajaniyam, it becomes, the object of the ruchi becomes bhajaniyam. And then it says, Bhagavan karoti tadeva ashakti apyayayate. This stage is called ashakti, right? Deep attachment. And it's at that time that I've mentioned before, a particular mood comes onto the chitta and the chitta completely resonates with that mood. So there's some revelation of what you received in a seed form at the time of initiation. It starts to manifest, and then of course in the stage of Bhav, Suddha Sattva, Vishesha, Atma, etc. Then actual crystallization of all of these things takes place. But it starts with understanding what is the path I'm walking towards that goal. If there's confusion about that, then sit comfortably with any mature devotee, ask questions, right? Because Tajmat Guru Prabhajeta Jigyashu Shreya Uttamam. Here it says relevant. Shreya means to my welfare in bhakti. Relevant inquiry should be made to Guru. If your Guru Dev is telling, don't you worry about Raganuga Bhakti, that's way above your grade, and they're not giving any analysis, description, helping, that's not helping a disciple. So actually giving perspective on Raganuga Bhakti will help the disciple to understand where they are in their adhikar and understand the need to grow. And also artificial humility won't do here. Oh, I'm just so fallen. Because real humility is an actual spiritual sentiment. In the material world, the nature of ahamkar won't allow you to have genuine humility. So in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, I believe it is, it's described what humility is. Paripokena dhanasha Krishna prema jasamvitanyate. In the unfoldment of Krishna Prem, real dainya bhav, or the sentiment of humility comes. So don't impose false humility. It's another kind of sahajavad, really. Right? Just be in proper etiquette, Vaishnav etiquette and Vaishnav sadachar. These are the controlling mechanisms that create the practice of humility, because the genuine sentiment hasn't really arisen yet. Right? Of course, parasparam. It also says in the second line, parasparam, sort of mutually, according to your advancement, then humility is coming. So it's not that everyone's humility is just in nil, right? But in general, the sentiment of dhanya bhav, which is a sanchari bhav, has not really come in the jiva. And as long as there's any degree of ahamkar, hamkar itself is it is the antithesis of humility, because it's presenting that I am the controller, the doer, etc., etc. So as long as some degree of ahamkar is still present and it has not been subdued by the rise of the internal spiritual identity, there's going to be some pride, right? So rather than to fight with the idea of artificially imposing just by word of mouth, oh, I'm so fallen, I'm so this, I'm so that, just do Vaishnav Sadachar, Vaishnav etiquette properly. Also always meditate on your Guru Pada Padma, because in the presence of Guru some semblance, because Guru has Swarup Shakti, some semblance of the Abbas of humility actually comes. You understand? So if you're in constant meditation on Guru, some symptom will appear there as actual humility. But in a genuine way, practice sincerely with the idea, yes, why not? I have potential and am eligible in the practice of bhakti to obtain a greed for service to Radha and Krishna in Sri Vrindavan Dham among their eternal associates, etc., etc. And that is the pursuit or goal that I have. If you're unclear about the goal and your spiritual master is present, you can inquire from him about the mantras received and, well, what is the Sambandha Gyan here, etc., etc. If your Guru Pada Padma has entered Samadhi, you can approach any realized, mature person to try to get an understanding. My Guru Pada Padma gave me, my Gurudev gave me mantras, but I was not clear. On that day, it was a huge festival. There was so much prasadam, so much kirtan. I met so many friends. There were 10 of us who took initiation all at the same time. We got t-shirts from the festival, everything. And when I went in to see Gurudev, he mentioned some things and he gave me the paper with all the mantras. How many people really underwent some deep explanation of mantra, artha, chintan, what is the meaning of the mantras and what is the mantra dhyan? So, and there's no harm because, you know, in practice, literally, you know, for so many years, this has been the norm. So, but at some point, the onus is on the disciple or the aspirant to go and get all these things cleared up. Either by your Gurudev, if it's possible, which it should be, because if not, then there's some kind of corruption in the Guru-disciple relationship if you can't get these things clarified there. This is what Guru means, right? That he removes doubts or she removes doubts and bestows Divya Gyan. I mean, at the time of initiation, bestowing of Divya Gyan, Shiyate Papanasanam, giving the potency to remove the blockages to move forward in bhakti. If that's not happening, then you have to get some clarity on the nature of the relationship. All right? So hopefully this answered the question, what is Srila Prabhupada's, or the reconciliation rather, of Srila Prabhupada's emphasis or not on Raganuga Bhakti. My understanding is that Srila Prabhupada in his empowerment multitasked and did many things. Bring thousands of people in. By his prabhava influence, he influenced the whole world with conceptions that were not really manifest in the whole material world at that time, on reincarnation, vegetarian, all kinds of things. And at the same time, in the inner mandala, I'll say, inner circle, in his writings, in what he gave as a practice, and in so many ways, he gave what is the actual practice in the line of Mahaprabhu, which is Raganuga Bhakti, right? And he gave emphasis to going through the process of maturation to genuinely come to that, so we would not be plagued by Prakrita Sahajavad. All right, so hopefully this was somewhat helpful, Prabhu. My Dhanavad Pranam. Again, I always avail that people can write, and I can, if there's anything I missed or something that's specific that you wanted to address, you can write again, and I'll either address you directly, or if it's a broad enough topic, then I'll present it here, right? In my infinite laziness to keep typing. That's what this was born of. It's just answering so many inquiries and things like that by typing. And so I elected to do it. And also I mentioned I elected to do it in this format because that helps me, that any mistake that I may make, I could be corrected by devotees and things like that. So it's just an overall better way to present, because it's helpful both to me and my own growth, and also hopefully helpful to those who have taken the time and energy to write and want to get their inquiries satisfied. All right. Vancha kalpaturubhyascha kripa shinduevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So I do have some travel coming up, and I will kind of post it at the time that it becomes relevant. I know one place that we will visit is in Ypsilanti, and I'm very happy about that because I so much love the devotees there. All the places we're going, to Ohio as well, so forth. But I've always had such a sweet, I don't know, reciprocation with devotees there in Ypsilanti, as well as other places, so I'm not singling out. but I also have great affection for sort of the fearless leader that's there. I don't want to mention his name because, I don't know if he would like that. It may be embarrassing for him. But so just overall, I'm looking forward to it. My health is up to traveling more now, so I look forward to it and like that. All right. Vancha kalpaturubhishcha kripasindhavaivacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Radhe Radhe.